A reading from the beginning of the Book of Wisdom. Love justice, you who judge the earth. Think of the Lord in goodness, and seek him in integrity of heart, because he is found by those who test him not, and he manifests himself to those who do not disbelieve him. For perverse counsels separate a man from God, and his power put to the proof rebukes the foolhardy. Because into a soul that plots evil, wisdom enters not, nor dwells she in a body under debt of sin. For the Holy Spirit of discipline flees deceit, and withdraws from senseless counsels. And when injustice occurs, it is rebuked. For wisdom is a kindly spirit, yet she acquits not the blasphemer of his guilty lips. Because God is a witness of his inmost self, and the sure observer of his heart, and the listener to his tongue. For the Spirit of the Lord fills the world, is all-embracing, and knows what man says. Verbum Domini. Guide me, Lord, along the everlasting way.
Guide me, Lord, along the everlasting way.
O Lord, you have probed me, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I stand. You understand my thoughts from afar. My journeys and my rest you scrutinize. With all my ways you are familiar.
Guide me, Lord, along the everlasting way.
Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know the whole of it. Behind me and before, you hem me in and rest your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain.
Guide me, Lord, along the everlasting way.
Where can I go from your spirit? From your presence, where can I flee? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I sink to the netherworld, you are present there.
Guide me, Lord, along the everlasting way.
If I take the wings of the dawn, if I settle to the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall guide me, and your right hand hold me fast.
Guide me, Lord, along the everlasting way.
Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Alleluia, alleluia. Shine like lights in the world as you hold on to the word of life. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
Dominus vobiscum.
Et cum spiritu tuo.
Lectio Sancti Evangelii secundum Lucam.
Gloria tibi, Domine.
Jesus said to his disciples, "Things that cause sin will inevitably occur. But woe to the one through whom they occur. It would be better for him if a millstone were put around his neck and he be thrown into the sea, than for him to cause one of these little ones to sin. Be on your guard. If your brother sins, rebuke him, and if he repents, forgive him. And if he wrongs you 7 times in one day and returns to you 7 times saying, I am sorry, you should forgive him. And the apostles said to the Lord, increase our faith. The Lord replied, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you would say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. Verbum Domini.
Laus tibi Christe.
I came across an article by Matt Abbott, in which he has a hypothetical confession. So this is not an actual confession, but he hypothesizes a confession that might go like this. A young man enters the confessional and he says, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. The priest surmises this person's a teenager or young adult. It's been a week since my last confession. I'm guilty of many lustful thoughts, and I looked at some very immodestly dressed women more times than I should have. And the priest said, why did you continue to look? Why didn't you go someplace else away from them? I couldn't, said the young man. They were in front of me, and I was kind of hemmed in by the crowd. Well, why were you in such a place to begin with? Don't you remember that we are to avoid places that may be occasions of sin? The young man answers, yes, Father, I know that, but I had to be there. The priest, somewhat puzzled, then asks, why did you have to be there? And where were you? At the beach, at a sporting event? No, Father, said the young man, I was at your noon mass last Sunday, and 2 scantily dressed girls were sitting in the pew right in front of me, along with their parents. I couldn't move because my parents were on either side of me. And then he goes on to say, although this confession is hypothetical, the situation was not. That he was in a parish church, prominent parish church at the main Sunday Mass, and sitting in the back, and where we were sitting, we observed approximately a dozen very immodestly dressed women, with the majority of these being young girls in their teens and early 20s, in many cases in the company of their parents. What did the Lord say in today's gospel? Very strong words. His strongest words addressed to those that would lead others into sin. Things that cause sin will inevitably occur, but woe to the one through whom they occur. It would be better for him if a millstone were put around his neck and he be thrown into the sea than for him to cause one of these little ones to sin. One of the worst punishments was drowning for the worst crimes. A millstone was something a donkey was needed to turn in order to grind out that grain into wheat. That's a pretty strong image that the Lord is using to tell us how bad leading other people into sin is. To give scandal. The Catechism says this of scandal under the 5th commandment, Catechism number 2284. Scandal is an attitude or behavior which leads another to do evil. The person who gives scandal becomes his neighbor's tempter. He damages virtue and integrity. He may even draw his brother into spiritual death. In fact, St. Alphonsus, in talking about scandal, he says that this is worse really than physical murder because you may lead to the death of a soul that's dearly loved by God, that was redeemed by Christ. And so what are examples of scandal? A parent who allows their children to watch bad television or associate with bad companions. Those in school, a classmate who takes God's name in vain, which induces others to do likewise. An older brother who induces his younger brother to something immoral. A priest or religious who lives in a lax or worldly way. We know the sad effects of scandal of that sort. A mother who dresses immodestly and allows her daughter to. Those involved in the media who have no regard for the negative influence that they have in leading people to promiscuity and to violence only for the sake of a few dollars, leading to the destruction of our society. These are all examples of scandal. And so a question for us today is, are there ways that we are giving scandal? You know, the way that we influence people more than any other is by our example. That has more of an influence on people, and none of us will go to heaven or hell alone. We will take others with us by our example, by our words, by what we've done, by what we've failed to do or refused to do. So by our good example or our bad example, we're going to lead others with us. That's a powerful influence that we have, the most powerful influence perhaps. Children more attention pay to what you do than what you say. And that's true of, I think, every person, that we are especially impacted by the example of others. And this is one of the reasons why we want to always keep before our own eyes good examples. Why we should have spiritual reading every day. We live in very challenging times. We're surrounded by scandal. And we're surrounded by invitations to do evil. Today's psalm in our divine office, in the office of reading, Psalm 73, talked about, the psalmist is talking about how he too was tempted to do evil because of the bad example around him. And so he said, "Yet my feet came close to stumbling, my steps had almost slipped. For I was filled with envy of the proud when I saw how the wicked prosper. How useless to keep my heart pure and wash my hands in innocence. Then I said, if I should speak like that, I should abandon the faith of your people." And so he makes a resolution to be faithful to God, because he sees that eventually all wickedness ends in destruction in one way or another. How slippery the paths on which you set them. But scandal has an impact on each of us. And so we need to hold before our eyes always good examples. The first question I address to all of us today is there a way that we are a source of scandal to others? And if there is, then we need to eliminate that from our own lives so that we can rather give a virtuous example. Those who have given scandal, and have we given scandal in the past? You know, there have been occasions when I have gone home to visit my family in Iowa, and some of my relatives will remind me of some of my early days. For some reason, they like to do that. And that's okay. It keeps me humble, I suppose. But St. Alphonsus says when we look at, our past and ways that we have given scandal to others, perhaps influenced others to do evil, we need all the more then to give a good example and to edify people and lead them to virtue by our good example. So that's the way that we counteract any negative impact we've had on others in the past. One of the things that I've continually witnessed in my many years here and witnessing young men and young women entering religious life is the impact that that has on their entire families. That when a young man or young woman enters into religious life, it really impacts that whole family by that good example. And it draws them to be more prayerful, to be more serious about their own faith, perhaps to be reconciled to the church. I've heard the confessions of parents who'd been away for a long time. And so that's the power of a good example. J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings, he talked about a number of priests that he knew, and they weren't exactly the greatest examples. But he said one Father Francis outweighs them all. And what he was talking about there was a priest who took him under his wings after his mother had died. And this priest was very much a father to him. And in fact, he helped him and raised him out of his own finances. And so he was this wonderful priestly example to J.R.R. Tolkien that he said outweighs all of the other bad examples that he had experienced. So have we or are we a source of scandal to others? Are we leading others to sin in any way by our own bad example? And if we are, to rectify that and to all the more want to lead people to virtue through our own good example, through our words, through the things that we do, the things that we refuse to do or to take part in. And an important question for all of us that I alluded to as well is, has our resolve been weakened by the scandal that surrounds us, that's all around us? Has our own resolve to be faithful to Christ been weakened by that? Well, if they've abandoned the Lord, if they can enjoy, at least for a time, living outside the commandments, if they can compromise, well, maybe I too should throw away the cross and do the same. Has our own resolution been weakened because of the scandal that is around us? Here are some quotes to help us to hang in there and to be strong. From Winston Churchill, "A kite flies highest against the wind." A kite flies highest against the wind. From Bishop Sheen, "Only a living body swims against the current. A dead thing floats with the stream." But only a living body can swim against that current. Remember that in God's providence, you and I have been placed at this time in history with its own unique challenges and difficulties, but where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. The greatest saints are those who lived in the most challenging times. That's what the Lord is calling you and I to be good examples. How many vocations did not blessed Pope John Paul II inspire? That many refer to this generation of priests and religious as a John Paul II generation. The power of his good example, his virtue. So in God's providence, we have been born at this time in history, we've been placed at this time in history. The greatest saints are those who lived in the most challenging times. Calm waters do not a good sailor make. And so it's those tempests and trials that beset us where we learn to be faithful to the Lord, where we learn to grow in our resolve to never let go of our clinging to Him and to being faithful to Him, whatever may come. And as I said, to each day put before our eyes good examples, those through our own spiritual reading. It's very important for us to spend time each day reading good things. As it's said, we turn on the evening news and then they begin to tell us why it isn't a good evening. and you hear about all the bad things going on. And so we need some good news before our eyes each day to read about the saints, the lives of the saints, to read things that will inspire us, encourage us to virtue in the midst of much temptation and scandal that may surround us all, and to be resolved to never be a source of scandal, but to always be that edifying example that will lead others with us to the joy of heaven. May the Lord give us the grace and the gift of the Holy Spirit to inspire us, to strengthen us in our resolve, and to persevere until the end.